Going live. You're live. It's Thursday afternoon with Pauly Hard. And I'm going to pour myself a big old glass of limonada. Delicioso. Oh, I like to see the bubbles. Was it stirred? Nope. Pouring is serving. Pouring is stirring. There we go. Oye, está bien. Pero yo dice, mi nombre es Pablito Corazón, and this is my first children's book that I have published. I've written many, but this is a compilation. This is called Math Magician and Other Tales of Awesomeness by Pauly Hart. And yes, if you're wondering, ooh, is that Comic Sans? It is Comic Sans. Read you the back. Math Magician and Other Tales of Awesomeness came into being because one night my younger brother Tim called me up and told me what his youngest son Gideon had said one day. Gideon had told Tim that he wanted to be a math magician when he grew up. It was the most amazing thing I had heard all day. Children often come up with the most important inventions of the world, and we should always listen and be willing to stop and listen to them. Oh, we should always be willing to stop and listen to them. I didn't say it twice. The hidden geniuses in our midst are often overlooked and underappreciated. Too often we undercut their ideas because we have been programmed to. I have worked with children all of my life. We have a lot to learn from them. If we can train the leaders of tomorrow to climb to new heights and outdo the things we have done, what would that look like? Without the self-restraints that we place upon ourselves, what could we achieve? Pauly. And then I have a picture of me. What? Focus. Focus, young Padawan. Here we go. That's horrible. Sorry, the light's in the way. It's a caricature. And then the bottom reads, Pauly Hart has a wonderful wife and 2 cats. His wife's name is Jennifer, and his cats' names are Toasted, Marshmallow, and Gondor. Toasty is very lazy and sleeps all the time, but Gondor runs around like a miniature jaguar. Jennifer acts normal. I'm not kidding. That's what it says. Okay. Page 1. Math Magician and Other Tales of Awesomeness. Oops, there's a typo. Tails is capitalized. Front matter. Blah, 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 blah. This is actually in when you I forget what it's called, but when you label something, you put it in a code, and it's the IBAC. Anyway, I can't remember the name of that. But anyway, it's like a library, the old card catalog code. And so this is in juvenile humor stories, I think. ISBN. And then I have the dedication for Gideon, Elias, Catherine, Ruth, Abigail, Aaliyah, and John. Gideon, Elias, and Catherine are my brothers and 3 children. And my best friend also has 4 children. Those are his. Math Magician and Other Tales of Awesomeness by Pauly Hart. Contents, Math Magician, page 6. Coco the Dragon, page 13. Saf and the Kitten, page 16. Coco and the Treasure, page 23. Detective Jumpers, page 27. Coco and the Giant, page 36. Orbs of the Over, page 40. Story the first, Math Magician. Math Magician had a big red cape that he wore everywhere. It had a huge yellow M on it, and he thought it was super cool. He could also fly, which everyone thought was cool. Sometimes he would fly really low and really fast over the water just to watch it go whoosh into the air. He thought that was probably the neatest thing he ever saw. Math Magician was a school teacher. Every morning he would have a big breakfast of prunes and corn biscuits and orange juice and fly to work. Sometimes people would ask him to help change a flat tire or help rescue a stray alligator. And he would always have time for help because he always got up early. One day as he was flying to school to teach, he saw a whatchamacallit very far away. He had a super good vision and didn't need glasses, but he saw the whatchamacallit and thought to himself, I'd better go help. So he turned left and swooped down to save the day. Well, it turned out it wasn't a whatchamacallit at all. It was only a regular doohickey, and they didn't need help. As a matter of fact, if you ever tried to help a doohickey, they might get mad at you for helping. Math Magician even tried to help a baby doohickey, and he ended up being yelled at. But just because people don't want your help doesn't mean that they don't need your help. So after looking around and correctly guessing the doohickey had broken a glass jar of grape jelly, Math Magician swooped away and then swooped back with a broom and dustpan, smiled, and left. Of course, he could have actually helped clean up, the purple sticky mess, but he remembered that he hated being yelled at when he was just trying to be nice. So off he zoomed to school, whoosh, over the water and into the window, and even landed on his feet when the bell rang. Ring went the bell really loud. The students were all sitting down, ready to learn. Not every school had a superhero as a teacher. Only William Mast Elementary was one of those. It was the most popular school in all the city because of Math Magician. Now, I don't know what you're thinking right now. You're probably sitting in your bed or laying on your floor. Hey, you might even be in school right now at this very second and you're reading this. But whatever you're thinking, Math Magician is, he probably is. And more. Most people think that Math Magician only teaches math, and of course he does. Math Magician teaches basic arithmetic to the first, second, third, and fourth, and fifth, and sixth graders. But he also teaches the rest of the school math classes as well. He taught 7th grade pre-algebra. He teaches the 8th graders algebra, the 9th graders geometry, the 10th graders function and statistics. Then after lunch, he teaches the 11th and 12th graders probability, calculus, trigonometry, and beginners quantum physics. He also teaches physical education on Wednesdays. He was such a good math teacher that he was the only math teacher that the whole school needed. He was never sick, never took days off, and never missed an opportunity to help children grow and learn. He gave them all the extra time they needed, and soon his students were winning state championships at mathathons. Many of his students were going on to be award winners themselves, and one even won the Nobel Prize. One day late after school, a student named stayed behind to get some extra help. It was little Ralphie. Little Ralphie had struggled to keep up with all the other students in class, and he was beginning to have a very bad time with every assignment the Math Magician gave him. It didn't matter what extra help little Ralphie got, he still could never seem to find the right answer to any of the questions on the board. The Math Magician told little Ralphie he needed to see him and his mother very soon. They both came in after school the very next day. The Math Magician had written several problems on the board and asked little Ralphie's mom to help solve them. She looked very embarrassed and told Math Magician that she couldn't help. They were very simple problems. One of the problems was 1 + 1 equals. Said Math Magician. He said again. Then he told him he would be right back. He flew out the window and down the store. The man in the store knew him very well and did what Math Magician asked. Math Magician flew back to the school with a plastic bag in one hand and a bright idea in his head. When he got back to school, he flew in the window and plopped down on his desk. He then pulled out 2 pairs of glasses, one for little Ralphie and one for his mother. Try these on, he said, smiling. They both put on the glasses. Hey, shouted little Ralphie, I can see. Hey, shouted the mom, I can see too. They both jumped up and solved all the problems on the board really fast. Math Magician erased them and drew some more problems. These solved these too. The principal and the other teachers who stayed behind school came running into the room. What's going on? They all wondered. I never had any problems at all, little Ralphie said. I just needed glasses. Math Magician had saved the day once again. The end. Now, my wife says that I missed a great opportunity to talk about math. And that's true. And Math Magician might get into some math problems. But I was going on. You see, Gideon didn't know what a Math Magician was. And obviously, he's good at math. So that being said, what is the magician part? Well, I figured Math Magician would be super good at math and would also be a superhero. And because we need role models in our lives, boys and girls, I figured that we could just make him a really cool guy. So a superhero that does good things. And not just like battles evil villains, because that's not realistic, because, regular superheroes do that. But Math Magician solves regular problems. Now, whatchamajickets and whatchamacallits and doohickeys and finger bobblers aside, he does take care of, little Ralphie, and little Ralphie needs glasses, and maybe, little Ralphie needed more. I don't know. But that's the story, and you can like it or hate it or whatever. But anyway, that's part of the book. That's the first story in the book. Oh my gosh, that glare is so horrible. Here we go. By the way, that's my drawing. That's not my drawing. That is by, let me look at the front matter. DW. I never did get his name. So, Coco the Dragon. Second story in my book. Now, there are 3 Coco stories in this book, and I kind of spread them apart because I didn't know if I should have a full Coco book or just parts of Coco, but I have 3 more Coco stories that I'm working on right at this very moment. Not really, but you know what I mean. Like, in this time, I'm working on several books, and Coco's other stories or some of them. So I'll read you the first Coco story, and then we'll move on. Coco the dragon. Coco was a dragon. He lived in the jungle. His favorite thing was playing. Coco just loved to play. He thought that playing was the best thing in the world. Timothy's sailboat was Coco's best friend. Timothy lived in the sea. He loved to sail and sail and sail. Timothy could sail forever. He thought that sailing was the best thing in the world. One day, Coco and Timothy were playing together in the bay. They played together as often as possible. They had the best times together. They thought that playing was the best thing in the world. One day, Coco had an idea. Let's go to my house and have cookies. Timothy's sailboat thought that was a great idea, but there was one problem. Timothy was a sailboat, and he couldn't go to Coco's house. So Coco thought of a solution. Coco would go home and get the cookies for Timothy. Coco thought that that was the best thing in the world. They could eat cookies all day long, and sometimes they did. The end. So obviously a little bit lesser of a grade level. That is okay. The next story I have, Saf and the Kitten, and I think this will be the last one. Yeah, I'll read Saf and the Kitten, and I might read the next Coco story, which is called Coco and the Treasure, which is a little bit more advanced than the first Coco story, but you never know. Now, Saf and the Kitten didn't start off as a children's story, so it's about 6th grade, 5th grade level. Long ago, Saf had been known. Oh, sorry, let me start over. Long ago, Saf had become. Oh my gosh. Long ago, Saf had become known as the Emperor without words. And that was just how his subjects treated him. The subjects would come one by one. It was always the mice first, due to their impertinence. There's a word. And bow and grovel at his feet, presenting their gifts one by one in tears of sorrow. It was then that Saf would wake up screaming, as he always did. It was a farce, for his only reality was the Jade Dungeon and the Minotaur that kept him there. The Minotaur's name was Jake, and it was funny that he lived in the Jade Dungeon. He had always wanted to go out and see the mountains, but no one had ever given him any heed, as he only spoke Kraken, and he never saw the Kraken anymore. Saf had the same dream about the kitten every night. He was quite convinced that it really was a dream about kittens, but the mice were always there, ruining everything with their terrific demands. More piers into the sea, more bridges at the ant swamps, more this and more that. And they always left their disgusting pink gift in tiny pink vials. It was the tears of the Everqueen, long dead and forgotten. How they had gotten these tears were beyond him, and he probably shouldn't have asked, but in a dream, you never know how things will turn out. Invariably, there's a word, he would ask again and again, and he would always tell them she died in her loving embrace, and she let us eat her when she passed. Saf knew it was all lies, but they told him the same story over and over, and he began prone to believe it after a while. And so night after night, he would dream the same ridiculous dream. Morning after morning, the Minotaur would come and banging on his cage, telling him to shut up. Breakfast would come, usually in the form of crunch rocks, but there would never be anything to drink. Once there was no breakfast, and once there was waffles. Waffles had only happened once, and so every time he ate a crunch rock, he imagined delicious waffles with nice warm syrup. Seriously, even if the waffles they had served him had not been warm or delicious, and probably shouldn't have been called waffles to begin with. The Minotaur would then begin reading poetry to him. It was long and drawn out, but it pleased the Minotaur very much, and since there was nothing better to do, he let the Minotaur drone on and on. On and on in his unique and strange language of the sea, he would read poetry to Saf from his very large orange book. He had tried to teach the Minotaur to speak like him, but often for a reward that only would be a sharp prick with the trident. Soon Saf decided the best thing to do would be to nod and act as if the Minotaur's poetry was very important and rhymed very well. The cage hung from a large chain high into the sky. He would have called it a ceiling, but since he couldn't see the top of it, there was no use. So he might as well call it the sky. The cage was round and approximately 1/2 meter in diameter. It was very tall, however, and Saf could stand whenever he wanted and did so often. When sitting, he would dangle his 4 legs out from the sides of the cage and hum quietly to himself. One day, as he was humming along, the Minotaur came round, making his daily checks. He stopped and listened to Saf. Saf, of course, lost in song, had his eyes closed. Saf had never hummed with the Minotaur near before, for he knew and feared the Minotaur would not like the tune, so he was very stealthy about it. But this day, as I have said, his eyes were closed, and there was nothing to do about it You know, as you do when you don't know when anyone else is watching, you hum and hum and hum. What startled Saf more than anything was the fact that the Minotaur started humming along with him. And why not? Minotaur was a huge fan of music. He even had an old Donna Summer record that he would play at night up in his spire when all the prisoners were either asleep or dead. Of course, he only had 2 records, the other one being Donnie and Marie Osmond, but he couldn't stand that one and had since smashed it to pieces. Saf, completely taken aback the Minotaur had been listening, stopped. So the Minotaur poked him again with his trident, and Saf began humming once again. Moments turned into days, which promptly turned into weeks, and wouldn't you know it, before long, the Minotaur had learned all the songs that Saf could teach him. This made the Minotaur angry, who had quickly decided that all he really wanted to do was become a musician or perhaps see lens. This had made him feel good inside and filled him with a sense of purpose, even more than poetry did. Jake would be in lights at the theater, and everyone would come to see him for his famous tunes. He even stopped writing new poetry. Maybe he would write more poetry one day, once he had created songs from his old existing poetry from his big orange book. He had big plans. Saf, if he had known about the Minotaur's aspirations, would have perhaps hesitantly told him, that he was a terrific student of music, but he couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. Saf did not speak Kraken, so little was done. Well, that's all there is to tell. For all we know, Jake and Saf still hum away to this very day. There weren't any kittens in this story, sorry. Saf had never gotten over the fact that the dream had always happened in the same way, and Jake kept waking him up earlier and earlier to be hummed to, so Saf never got farther into the dream where the kittens appear. He knew that they might eventually, but it just never happened. Which makes me sad. I wanted to tell you about kittens, and maybe I wanted to tell you how Saf taught the Minotaur lyrics, and through that, taught him Grelsh, which is the language that Saf spoke. And by that, convinced the Minotaur that he had a terrible job and should release all the prisoners at once. The Minotaur would have agreed, and then they would have all danced happily away into the sunset. But sadly, that is not at all what happened. And I am incredibly sorry that there's not a better ending to this story. The end. That one's extremely satisfying to me because it's unsatisfying. How do I say this without sounding like a jerk? My favorite story, or perhaps the story that I remembered the most as a child, was called The Lady or the Tiger. Now, this was during the 6th. This is during the 7th grade when I was just getting into Edgar Allan Poe. And I liked Edgar Allan Poe because he sparked my imagination and built stories on my fear. And I hadn't never experienced that before. There was a little bit of it in The Lord of the Rings, which I read in the 6th grade. Hey, Toasty. There's Toasty, my cat's tail. Hold on, let me go get him. Come here. Come here. Jump up here. Come on. Come here. There he is. Let me see your scar. Oh, it's got a little scar. Oh, there you go. Hey, Toasty. And so, Smeagol and Shelob and Sauron and Saruman, they were not as horrible as, well, every Poe story. I mean, besides The Raven, I didn't like that, never really liked that story. Lenore just really didn't do it for me. Mask of the Red Death. And then I started reading Lovecraft, and then I started reading King and a couple of other ones. I started really getting into horror. And so I like the fact that Saf and the kitten there's Gondor's head right here. Gondor, what are you doing? Are you sniffing? Huh? So I like the fact that, oh, Toasty, you're so annoying sometimes. Goodbye. I like the fact that I was enchanted with a new subject. And so I wrote Saf, and I had a couple of endings in my head. But I wanted to change the dynamic of the storyteller, and I wanted to abruptly interrupt and force the fourth wall into the child's face, because that's not at all what they're used to. And so when the storyteller pops through the story and says, "Hello, I'm the storyteller," to a child, it really changes the way that they view the writing. And because The Lady and the Tiger, I guess I'm going to have to explain The Lady and the Tiger story to you, because it's very important. Because that story changed my mind and how my mind works around written words so much. Changed me. So let me briefly preface. I really can't preface because I've already done that. Let me interject the brief story of The Lady and the Tiger, the best way I know how. There was a man trapped in a room with two doors, and the king was a terrible king. He had trapped him in there, and he said to him, there's some sort of riddle that was involved, and there's a couple of different ways to say it. But basically, choose one door, because the king didn't like the fact that this guy was in love with this lady. And his love was so great and so deep, like Romeo and Juliet, he'd rather die than be without her. So he chooses a door. Which door did he choose? Well, there's no answer to the story. And you think about it, if he chooses the lady, he's going to be happy with her. If he chooses the tiger, then he's going to die. There's a couple of things about the story that bug me. And there's a couple of more extenuating circumstances that are attached to the lady and also to the guy and also to the king. So go read it yourself. I'm not gonna demystify. I'm not gonna declassify it as I've just ruined it anyway, but I won't ruin it further. Oh, Pauly, you're an idiot. Okay, so anyway, that's the first three stories from my book. Go buy the book. There are other stories. There's two more Coco the Dragons. There's Detective Jumpers. He is a detective. He has a super duper crime solving kit. He goes and solves problems, solves crimes. He has a magnifying glass collection. There's another Coco story. Then there's Orbs of the Over. And Orbs of the Over exists in a world where they're like fairies, and they're like helpers of creation, and they create different things like ants and bees and leviathans and things like that. So they're like God's little helper angels. So it's interesting because they get into a sort of a problem, and my life, lemonade drinking days are upon me now. Okay, bye.